Joe Abraham here for ESPN Radio Winchester, and we get a chance now to follow up with Sheriff Tim Fuller on the debate that was had just this past week. And as we've offered all of the candidates kind of a short little follow-up interview to the debate, Sheriff, we appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So my first question for you to start off, what was your major takeaway from the debate?
I was shocked the other night, and one of my opponents brought this to the forefront about his department being part-time. I was shocked because I've never known his department to be part-time. Since he's been chief of police, he's been part-time, evidently, by his own admittance. And his way of dealing with that is they have enough budget and personnel to be full-time, and he has chosen to be part-time. We answer 25% of their calls in that end of the county because they have no one on duty. And you brought it up the other night about, them being part-time. We have a similar department in this county, almost identical in size and nature. They're full-time. They're very self-sustaining. Yes, there's things that happen even there that they need our assistance or help or guidance. And other night, it was brought up about them being part-time. They have the personnel to be full-time, but they choose to be part-time. And even to the point, made the statement that he was lucky if he had somebody on duty. And I've asked him numerous times since he's been chief of police, numerous times, what are you going to do to fill these positions? Well, I hadn't found the right person. Well, even in drug enforcement end of this other night, he brought up about about the zero. His stats is zero for the last 2 years for not making any drug cases. And he's a believer in second chances. Well, that's fine. But there's a correct way to do that, not stopping dope out on the side of the road and saying, we'll see you later. And as an officer, you collect that as evidence. If you're going to give them a second chance, you got it in evidence. You got it documented this happened. And you got to follow up with that. You got to hold people to the fire, their feet to the fire. And I was shocked by that approach. And what's scary about this, he's going to be sheriff of a sheriff's office, 130 employee personnel, but yet he can't even take care of his own department in today's world and classifying as part-time. That blew my mind. I was shocked by that whole scenario that happened. And, I don't mean to be negative or bad, but it's true. It's the bottom line.
Okay.
And, but the debate itself, I felt like was not the best format in the world to be able to respond to these type of questions I'm answering this morning.
Yeah.
I just felt like it wasn't.
Yeah. It's definitely, like I said, coming into this conversation, it's a challenging format, and it's one that has been used for a long time. There are positives and negatives to it, but
he brought out of the night about he's wanting to implement different programs. That's fine. Each one of those programs costs money, not a one-time fee, not a one-time cost. It costs money to move forward with those. So then he's campaigned all along about he's looking at being staunch or very tight-fisted with his budget. 74% of our employees, our budget in the sheriff's office employs people. So where are you going to cut? You're going to cut services. You're going to cut personnel. How are you going to cut that? These programs he is interested in implementing, and one, for an example, is GPS. It's going to cost money. Where are you going to get this money? You're going to have to increase the budget.
Yeah.
So that's, in my opinion, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth here.
Okay.
And I mean, I hate to say that, but it's true. Our history, we've saved over the last 19 years or 17 budgets, $3.3 million, and I'm proud of that. that's what was a savings that we were able to return back to the taxpayers of the county to be used maybe in other places to shore up a shortfall or whatever. But I'm very, I do not understand his way of thinking on this. Totally, you're going to have money to implement these programs, but yet where you going to get it from?
Right. Yeah.
So that's troubling to me.
As far as the debate is concerned, you were challenged at one point in time during the debate for not fulfilling the DEA task force position. And I know that that's been something that's been brought up a little bit here and there. How would you respond to that?
That's not true. Dating back 2006 and 7, for example, I assigned someone DEA for the purpose of was swimming in the meth labs in this county. And I felt like that was the only answer we had to help ourselves on the federal prosecution. And I've had someone assigned there up until approximately a year and a half ago. And what had changed in the last year and a half, DEA has changed their way of dealing with their business too, because they're focused on border issues. But the last person I had signed, and I referred to him as Charles the other night, it's Chuck Stein's who it is.
Okay.
And we're in the process trying to get someone else assigned. And that whole dynamic has changed with drug dealing in this county. For an example, we're dealing with users that are dealing dope themselves. And if they have an order for dope or whatever, they go to Chattanooga or Atlanta or Nashville or Huntsville to get their supply, whatever they need to take care of who they're selling to, but also whatever amount they need for themselves because they're addicts. So that's all changed, totally changed. And, to refer to dealing with just dealers, that's a very understatement because that has changed. Years ago, we dealt with organizations in this county, and there's two cases in particular that I remember. One of them was a 14 member of one family that went federally indicted for moving tons, not pounds, tons of marijuana in this county. And that whole situation has changed.
Right. Well, I appreciate you clarifying that because I was one of the people when you said Charles, I wasn't sure if you're talking about the other candidate or who you were talking about.
I was actually talking about Chuck Stein.
Chuck
Stein's actual name is Charles. So
yeah.
That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, yeah. And so, again, you're saying that the dynamic has changed a little bit, and so that position has kind of augmented a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. One of your opponents also during the debate repeatedly stated that the office of sheriff should be run like a business. How do you respond to that? What are your feelings regarding that statement?
I totally disagree with that. I've always felt like the sheriff's office or any law enforcement agency is a service. It's not a business. And I'm going to lead into this because I have a budget set every year by the county commission. And they're very staunch about that budget. And I have no vote in that budget, but I do submit the budget to them for approval. And an example, years ago when we were building on to jail, they were wanting to put a second control tower. Well, that's going to require more employees. At that time, it's about $120,000 worth of employees. And I was very opposed to that. As it turned out, we were able to get down to one control tower instead of the two. But had we went that route with two control towers, we would absolutely had to spend more money. And I felt like there was no need for that. And my opponent has been very, he tried to make a big deal of this business model versus service model. And I'll go down so far to say we can't pick and choose what calls we answer. We can't pick and choose who is incarcerated or locked up in jail today. So if you're in a business, you can control those things. We can't. And I respectfully disagree with him on that aspect, and I think he gave an example of the night about what we're spending for even automobile repair. And by all means, we went to a self-sustained shop several years ago for that purpose. So we were spending before that, spending about $350,000 a year on automobile repair. And I'm not beating up on anybody. We had to save money. So we're down to about $150,000 a year now versus 350 years ago. So that's the reason, to me, that's a very, very, even in the business standpoint, it's a very good decision.
Right.
But here again, it's a service.
Right. Yeah. It's a strong point. Again, the intention of a business is to make money. Services, that is not taken into account. It's not
Right.
about making a profit. So, interesting point. All right. So one of the other questions that I had for you following up is that, and it was a question that was kind of brought up by one of your opponents. How do you justify having just one single command staff meeting a year? That was something that one of the opponents seemed to attach to was it doesn't make sense to just have one command staff meeting a year.
I wish I could clarify that a little bit better than what was said the other night because, okay, I have one meeting a year and usually third week, second week of January to set our goals for this year. We meet almost on a daily basis, almost daily, about what's going on with the sheriff's office. For an example, this morning I had a meeting about a medical contract for some of my command staff. And then we meet almost on a daily basis to run the office of sheriff because you have to. This morning it was with my jail administrator about this medical contract, but it's almost on a daily basis, and that was taken totally out of context of reality. Yes, we do meet once a year about setting our goals for this coming year, what we're going to do. And he's trying to insinuate we only meet once a year about anything.
Right.
And that's not true.
Okay.
And grounds, what we deal with is absolutely has to happen almost on a daily basis because we have all sorts of issues going on, anything from investigations, anything dealing with the jail, our patrol, court security, SROs. So we have to meet almost on a daily basis about what's going on at this time.
Right. Okay. So in regard to and referencing back to your response during you're talking about the scope changed, essentially. Scope changes with that meeting versus the daily meetings that you guys have.
Yes.
It becomes much more focused and acute.
We do have that once a year meeting about setting our goals for this year, what we're going to do better, what can we do to make progress in a forward manner.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to state once again that, and we sat down with Troy Parsons Jr., we sat down with Sheriff Tim Fuller, and all three candidates were offered the same opportunity to take some time and respond to some of the questions that were brought up during the debate. Some things that they felt like maybe they didn't get to express clearly or within the time frame or whatever the case is. And two out of the three candidates chose to do that, but the opportunity was put out there for all three of the candidates. And again, we will have the debate between the county commissioner, seat A, District 1, Stanley Bean and David Eldridge coming up in just a little bit. Sheriff Tim Fuller, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us and taking this opportunity.
I can't say this loud enough. Thank you guys for giving us this opportunity. And, I feel like the choice for sheriff speaks volumes for myself, my experience, my knowledge. I've been beat up on over the course of this election over you're 63 years old. You've been here long enough. And I feel like I got a lot more to give back to the county. with my knowledge, my abilities, my leadership, and I'm not bashful to say that. And I feel like my opponent, our opponents, one opponent's very starting out at his beginning of his career. He's doing a very good job, but I feel like he's not there yet by virtue of his experience, his knowledge. Second opponent, I feel like he's treated his pretty much entire law enforcement career as a second job, and very much so with the last 9 years, him being chief of police of the department and the way it's ran. All these programs he's wanted to implement, has he done them himself? No. And on the other side of the coin, I feel like my experience speaks for itself.
All right. There he is, Sheriff Tim Fuller.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for folks who are wondering, again, early voting starting Friday, July 17th. Get out there and vote. Make your voice heard.
Absolutely.
Participate.
Election day is August 6th.
Yes, sir.
And I do ask everyone for their vote, their support. Please get out and vote.
Again, I am Joe Abraham. He is Sheriff Tim Fuller. We'll be back on the other side.
Thank
This
you.
is ESPN Radio Winchester.